Well, hello. Welcome to Inner Coded. Have you ever had two completely different conversations happening inside your mind at one given time? One voice says, "Go for it." The other voice says, "Don't do it. You're gonna embarrass yourself," or "Don't do it." One voice says, "Look how much you've healed," and the other voice whispers, "But you got so much more to do," or "You'll never change." How about one voice telling you to forgive someone, and then there's another voice that's holding on to the anger, telling you to stay mad? How about that one voice that tells you to trust the process or to trust? And then another voice telling you to hold on to the pain of the hurt. Here's a question. If all those voices exist inside your mind, your body, your being, which one is actually you? So today we're going to talk about one of those important forms of intelligence that we as human beings have the opportunity to develop. And I'm not talking about your IQ, right? I'm not talking about your emotional intelligence. I'm actually talking about discernment. Because one of the greatest gifts and some of the greatest mistakes that we can make at times is this assuming that every thought that we have is our belief. And it just doesn't work like that. Some thoughts are rooted in fear. Some thoughts are rooted in past hurts and wounds and experiences that we've gone through. Some thoughts are things that we have agreed to from other people, family members, society, that weren't truly ours, right? But then there's also a voice that's inside. It's real quiet. It's real steady. It doesn't shout for attention. The voice doesn't make you feel bad. It doesn't try to manipulate you. That voice is just constantly whispering truth, compassion, growth, courage. And I would like to call that version of that voice our highest self. So today I wanted to help you recognize the difference. So get ready, because that's what we're talking about on today's lesson. This is Inner Coded, and I'm Demetrius Iyer. On this channel, we're going to talk a little bit about changing behavior. And we decode our hidden patterns, our hidden thoughts, our hidden emotions and relationships with identity through conscious change, right? So that we can make conscious choices and create the people or the person that we desire to be. So that's kind of like what we do here at Inner Coded. So on one of my previous videos, we talked about discovering the importance of who you are. We learned about different types of behaviors that we call our personalities. And we talked through a little bit about different survival strategies and some of the past, like people pleasing and exploring that, right? Where that comes from. The versions of ourselves that have to be strong or hyper independence. Talked about those. We also discovered that strength isn't always strength, and sometimes it's protection, right? um, protection from a pain that we're going through, right? So go back to some of those videos if we haven't seen those. But today we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to talk about what's underneath the survival strategy, right? Because there are conversations that go on in our brain and our mind that actually shape the conversations that we have with ourselves, and shows up on how we show up in the world. It actually shapes our life. It shapes about our present circumstances, right? And I want you to think about this, because how many decisions have you made, right, because of something you believe about yourself, right? How many times you made decisions based off, I'm not smart enough? How many times have you made the decisions that, oh, I'm too old for that, or I'm too broken, or no one will ever love me, or I'm not enough, or I don't know, no one could ever love me. I'm always mess stuff up, right? I have to prove my worth, right, in order to be loved, right? Or countless other things. My question to you is, where did that belief come from? And did you choose those beliefs? Or was it something that you picked up along the way of life, right? Because most of us never take the time to stop and ask ourselves those real questions, those intimate conversations with ourselves, right? We just simply assume that this is what it is, and this is how it always has to be. And so if you think it to be true, then it must be true, right? But that's truly, truly, truly not how the mind works, right? The mind is like a recorder of our experiences, right? And your nervous system stores those memories, right? Your emotions are attached to that, right? And so over time, we give these experiences meaning, and they become an automatic thought, and they become automatically accurate, right, in our mind, because they're familiar. It's what we used to. And that's why one of the most powerful questions that you can ever ask yourself is, who taught me to think this way? Because not every one of your beliefs started with you, right? Some were spoken over you, right? Some of them are conditioned. Some of them you saw through family members, friends, teachers, or modeled for you, right? And some of them just things that you repeated internally, right? Like thought process that you got to work hard. Who the heck say you got to work hard, right? But we believe that, right? Who wants to work hard, right? And so that's why discernment truly matters, right? Because healing isn't about learning how to be positive, right? Healing is truly learning how to recognize which voice deserves your trust. I sit back and I think about just how many horrible decisions I made. And I learned that I was running on autopilot. I mean, it's just decisions that I lived on that was loud in my head that I wasn't enough. And I had to do something. I had to be something. I had to excel at something to be recognized. And I believe that. And so I strive constantly in my life to try to do things, be things, accomplish things, so that people could say, so I could feel validated. Like, that I could feel like I was worthy. But I had to get to a point to learn that I'm loved by God regardless of what I do and who I am. And so I no longer base my value off of what I can accomplish, or what I have accomplished, right? And so that was a shifting in my way of thinking. And that took time, because I had accumulated those thoughts in my life, and that became normal. I thought that's what had to happen. And for a long time in my life, I never questioned it. I just assumed that was me. And it wasn't until I slowed down and started meditating and started spending time, quiet time with my thoughts, that I got a chance to do some inner work. I got curious, right? I followed the principle of curiosity about myself. Where did that come from? Where did I adopt that personality or that thought process? And that time alone with myself made me familiar with my feelings and my thoughts. And it made me question everything. And it made me realize that every thought that I thought wasn't necessarily true. Some of it was habit. And that realization made me listen to myself. And it began the process of change. And that is what the healing journey looked like for me, and still does to this day. And if it does for me, it can work for you as well. I'm just here to share. So I'm going to introduce to you that four voices that I learned as I was curious about myself. And I'm going to give you a little description for it. And I'm not here to judge your thoughts. I don't want you to judge yourself, right? And I don't want you to try to fix yourself, right? I just want you to be curious and observe yourself. Observe your thoughts. Ask questions. Because awareness always comes before transformation. Okay? The first voice that I was able to identify within myself, I called it me personally. Now you can call this whatever you choose, call it for yourself as you do the inner work, right? As you do the work, you can label it whatever you choose, right? But for me, one of the first voices that came up for me that I identified was the wounded self, right? The pain came up, the hurt, the disappointment. I realized that it was speaking from a place of hurt, disappointment, rejection, not feeling worthy, not enough, past betrayals, the feeling of abandonment, right? And those moments in my life taught me that things weren't safe, right? I realized that it was trying to protect me from ever having or experiencing those pain again. That's what that wound itself was representing. And it whispered things to me like, you shouldn't trust that person, right? All people are bad, right? Don't get your hopes up high, right? Because you're going to only get disappointed. Or keep your guard up and don't let nobody in, right? Don't let nobody in. Keep everybody at arm's distance, right? And the wound itself, right? It doesn't hate me, right? It doesn't want me to be bad. I truly believe when I really unpacked that, it was truly trying to protect me, right? It would protect me from that feeling, that emotion that I experienced, right? But what I've learned is that the very life that I wanted and desired to build and to experience, that energy was keeping me from. And that was experiencing love. Genuine, unique love. It kept me from opportunities. It kept me from being vulnerable, right? So I had to ask myself, how many opportunities have I missed because of fear of the wound itself played out? How many chances did I didn't take because of the pain of the wound itself played out? And I want you to just, do this for yourself. Ask yourself that question. Take some time with yourself and just ask yourself, what have you missed out on based on the wound itself, keeping you in that place, that energy, things that you haven't tried, right? For me, another voice that came up for me, I call it the conditioned self, right? And it really talks to like conditioning, right? Because what I learned that some of what I was experiencing was actually programming, right? It was repetition, right? It was messages that I heard growing up, right? It was expectations that was placed on me. It was things that I learned from, just being in the culture that I was raised. It was family values, right? It was the way that my family acted and how they dealt with things, right? One of the big things that I remember growing up was that boys don't cry, right? Girls, good girls don't make people uncomfortable, right? Or you have to work twice as hard to get what you want, right? Um, you'll never amount to anything, right? So to be successful, that means you have to sacrifice everything in order to have success. And these are just some of the things that was whirling around in my mind. I had to stop and really ask myself, where did I come from, right? And I was like, I don't want to live like that, right? Those are some conditions that I have agreed to, right? That I no longer want to operate on. I don't want to be making decisions based off of those belief systems that were taught. A good book, plug, is The Four Agreements. Just the same as plug. That book is amazing. If you haven't read it, read it. Anyhow, yeah. So I had to make the choice to respond instead of react, right? And so it's like, okay, where is this coming from? What's the origin of this thought and where it comes from? Is it mine? Or did I agree to it? Who conditioned me to think that way? And it was one of the most freeing questions that I had ever experienced is this actually true? Or is this simply what I've always done? Is this familiar? Right? And where did it come from? Right? And so just asking yourself those questions, like, is this mine? Or is this something I adopted? Or is this something that was taught to me? What's the origin of this belief that I'm holding on to? Do I desire it to still be my life? Right? Another voice that came up to me was the ego. Now, when I say the ego voice, I'm not talking about bravado. I'm not talking about just show your confidence, right? Because there's a certain level of confidence is healthy, right? So I'm not talking about that. For me, and what I'm talking about as it relates to ego, ego is different. Ego's primary job is protection, right? It's image, it's control, it's recognition, it's what's familiar, right? So for me, the ego represents playing it small, right? The ego represents doing what always been done. And the ego is a direct opposition of your spiritual evolution and growth. So anytime, there's a version of yourself that's calling you higher, and then there's a part of you who's like, no, just keep it here, don't do that. That's your ego trying to keep you small. That's your ego trying to keep you from going and evolving. If your thing is a voice in your head, your higher self is telling you, hey, I need to exercise and lose a few pounds. And then another voice say, no, you good just like you are. You don't need to do anything. That's your ego version trying to keep you small, right? Keep you comfortable. Because the ego, a lot of times, is concerned about what it looks like, the appearance. But the highest version of yourself is truly called for you being authentic. Who's the authentic self? Right? The ego wants surface level stuff. It wants the applause. But your higher self wants alignment. Right? Big difference. Right? The ego is going to always compare itself to what everybody else is doing. The higher self is going to create its own lane. It's going to tell you what you're good and what you could be doing. The ego going to react to things. The higher self wants you to respond, make a conscious choice to respond. Big difference, right? You know, one's out of fear, the other one's out of truth. So be able to discern which one is your ego voice, which one is your higher self voice, right? And with that being said, the last voice for me that I was able to identify as the highest voice, the highest self is what I call. The highest self is a lot more steady. It's quiet. There's no panic involved. It's not rushing. It never insults you. It doesn't yell, scream. It doesn't behave badly. It's just a silent, steady invitation to do better, be better. It's a little nudge always that wants you to be a better version of yourself. It's slowly and patiently telling you truths, even when that truth is uncomfortable to you. Right? Your higher self may tell you to apologize to someone. Your higher self may tell your body it needs to rest. You need to rest your mind, your body. Your higher self may tell you, I want you to forgive such and such and such. Your higher self may say, I need you to let that relationship go. Your higher self may say to you, I want you to stop pretending and be your authentic self. Your higher self may say, I want you to notice the most important part of you. Your higher self doesn't always tell you things to make you feel good, but it always tells you stuff that leads towards your growth. That's a huge difference. It always wants what's best for you and others. And I don't want you to mistake comfort for peace. Just because you've always done things a certain way doesn't mean it's right. Right? Comfort keeps you where you are. But in order to have peace, you have to have some courage to do some things. Right? You have to have some courage to say the hard things, to do the hard things. That's different. When a thought enters your mind, don't immediately believe it. Interview it. Be curious. Ask yourself some questions around that thought. Like, does this thought create fear within me? Or does this thought invite a level of wisdom within me? Be inquisitive, right? When a thought enters your mind, is this voice trying to protect me or develop my character? Is it trying to protect how I look, my image? Or is it building something within me? Right? If someone I love deeply had this thought about themselves, would I agree with it? Ask yourself questions like that. Right? Be inquisitive. I offer you to welcome the spirit and the principle of curiosity. Be curious about your thoughts. Be inquisitive about your thoughts. Spend time with yourself. Ask yourself the hard questions. Because once you stop automatically believing every thought that you have about yourself, you begin to create a safe space within. You start to learn what discernment truly is. You start to open up the doors of discernment and recognize that this is where transformation truly starts. Not by controlling your thoughts, but by choosing which voice gets your attention. Your discernment starts to grow as you pay attention to yourself. Spending 5 minutes of just quiet time with yourself, just listening to yourself, asking yourself questions, being curious about your thoughts, and challenging the ones that are just trying to keep you small or keep you being the person you've always been. How have you been leading your life? What voices have been leading your life? Which voice have you given the most power to and authority to? Because this is what shapes your life. This is something that truly you get to control. How you move going forward. You get to choose how you're going to move with that thought that you just had. And that's truly where your power lies. God gave you the ability to choose, ability of choice. Not in eliminating thoughts, but how to choose how you're going to respond to these different thoughts that come up for you. That's a beautiful, beautiful gift God gave us as humans. I'm going to give you an example. Imagine you make a mistake at your job or within your company. Immediately a thought comes up. You're such an idiot. Or you're stupid. Just pause. Who said that? Was that my higher self? No. Because your higher self may have said something like, you made a mistake. Learn from it and keep going. Right? So notice the difference. Right? Versus you stupid versus you made a mistake. Notice the difference. Because one attacks your identity, and the other addresses the behavior and asks you to build and shape your character, your higher self. One voice may say to you, you're such a failure. The other voice may say, that decision failed. Two different conversations in your mind, right? The wound itself confuses what you did with who you are. Your higher self never, ever, ever does that. It never puts that on you, right? So I just want you to reimagine your thoughts. Question yourself so that you are able to make conscious decisions in the moment and get off an autopilot. Stop allowing your habits to run your life. Stop allowing the way you've always done things to run your life. Take control of your life. Stop allowing the ego to run your life, your past, your history, and start leaning into the greatest gift God gave us, which is our choice, and choose your highest self. Reject those painful habits that we've accumulated over time, right? Own it. Own your life. Own your future. This is why two people can experience the same event and walk away with entirely different futures, right? Not because life treated them differently, but because they listened to two different voices. You know, as a convicted felon, I've been able to change my life, thank God. But there are other people that have been convicted and did prison time that keeps repeating the same cycle. You gotta have an inner pause. You gotta take time to own your life and simply just pause. Take an inner pause. Wherever you are. Whenever you need it. Whenever you're emotionally charged and activated, take an inner pause. And learn to make your choice to respond and not just react. Take a deep breath and respond, and don't react. Own your life. Make a choice. Ask yourself when you're triggered, what am I feeling right now? Not what you're thinking. What are you feeling? What am I actually feeling? What is this? Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it anger? Is it embarrassment, disappointment? What's the origin of whatever it is that I'm feeling? Name it. Because once you name it, you can work with it, right? You can work with it once you know what it is. You can put it on your altar. You can go to God with it. You can pray over it. But you got to know what it is. Which voice is speaking? Is it your wounded self? Is it your higher self? Is it the conditioned self? Is it your ego? You know, ask yourself these questions. Figure out who the heck is showing up talking to you, right? And don't be in a hurry to get an answer, right? Because sometimes it takes practice to sit with yourself so that you can be aware of what's coming up. That takes practice. This is not something that you can do in 5 minutes if it's your first time. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes. The more you get into stillness, the more the voice becomes clearer. Because every story that you tell yourself is not true. And when you create this practice, you're able to separate what's actually true from what you assume about yourself. Okay? Now, this process is not easy, and it doesn't always feel good. But just be present enough to know and to ask yourself, is this my ego trying to keep me small? Or is this my highest self trying to glean something out of my character and move me towards healing, move me towards inner peace? Because those are different voices that you will hear within yourself if you just spend some time asking yourself questions. Okay? All right, so we've been doing this for a while. We've been talking. I hope you've gotten some good things from the conversations that we had, right? But I don't want you to leave today's conversation with anything negative about your thoughts, right? I don't want you to try to leave this conversation trying to silence every negative thought that comes up, because that honestly is not realistic. And that's not part of how the healing actually works. Because healing is not about having fewer thoughts, right? Healing is about developing better discernment on what and choosing what to listen to. It's about getting clear about what's fear. It's about getting clear about what's doubt. You'll still hear your old conditioning from time to time. But the difference is, the more you do this work, you won't be automatically giving that voice the megaphone of your life and allowing it to drive you in your decisions in life, right? So that's what this whole lesson is about. It's about you taking control of your life. And that's not to say that I come from a place where I'm healed, because there are times that wounds show up in my life. Relationships will bring out some of your wounds now. Your relationship can be your mirror. And your relationships can show you the areas that you still need to work on and to heal. That doesn't make me immune to this human process. I'm no guru, right? I'm just a human that questions myself and is inquisitive about how I get to be who I am and take ownership of who I choose to be. I invite you to be curious about yourself. I invite you to ask questions of yourself. I invite you to ask your higher self to show up, right? To be clear, to usher you towards the truth of yourself, to pause the habits of your life. This has changed the way that I lead. It's changed the way that I parent. It changed the way that I speak to myself and how I hold myself, even when I do bad things or things that's not at my highest self. I think one of the most important things it has done for me is it has given me a different way of understanding my own humanity and the humanity of everyone else. So before we end today's session, I want you to just sit with one question. Maybe you write about it. Maybe you journal about it. Maybe you speak it into a voice app. Maybe you just think about the question as you go on a walk today or before you go to bed. Right? But I want to leave you with this question. I want you to ponder on it. Be curious about it. Right? What voice has been leading your decisions lately? Not occasionally, but lately. And I don't want you to judge. I don't want you to judge whatever comes up. Just notice it. Just be aware of it. Because awareness is the beginning of transformation. Alright? So, I want to leave you with this. I'm leave you with this thought. Your mind will always have and contain different voices. Some were born from a pain, a hurt, a wound. Some come out of your environment in which you grew up in. Some exist just to protect you. Know that. But beneath all of them, there's a very, very ancient, quiet, still voice. A wise voice. A voice that doesn't shout, doesn't scream, doesn't ask for attention. It's not trying to prove itself. It's a voice that always calls you forward to be courageous, and to move towards courage instead of fear. There's an ancient voice that's always moving you towards truth instead of performance and showing up. That's moving you towards love instead of guilt and shame. Recognize that voice. Listen to that voice. Because it's the greatest gift you can ever give to yourself. Clarity about the voice and which voice you should honor. As you do this work, you are inner-coded with greatness. The ancient voice is inside you. Discern which one it is. Get clear about that. So if today's conversation helped you even just a little bit, I invite you to continue on your journey. Download the app, www.app.innercoded.com. I got this free assessment on that app that you can take. And it'll help you assess where you are and gives you pointers on different things that you can do to discover yourself, to restore yourself, to come back to who you were created to be. I'd love to hear your experience. I welcome it. It will be an honor, right? It would be an honor to hear your experience. So, thank you for spending some time with me. Thank you for tapping tapping into today's lesson, we got an opportunity to really explore the different voices that we go through and that we have in just this experience of life, right? Just be inquisitive about your higher self. Be inquisitive and getting clear about who your higher self is, right? And why is it difficult for you to hear it? Because the answer isn't that your higher self is silent. It's not it. The true reason behind it is because everything else is louder in your life. And simply as that's as simple as I can put it. You have to get still and quiet your environment so that you can hear it. Hear that ancient voice that dwells within you. Discern that higher voice. Alright? That's all I have. I'm Demetrius Ari. Thank you for spending time with me. Continue to decode your potential. Alright? Until the next time, peace, love, and light.